Welcome to Hope for Your Pelvic Floor, the podcast where honest conversation meets real, evidence-based solutions for your pelvic health. I'm Claire Sparrow, second-generation Pilates teacher, educator, and best-selling author. I'm here to help you understand your body better, move with confidence, and finally get answers that make sense. Each week, we'll bust myths, share insights from movement science and pelvic health research, and give you practical steps you can actually use in your everyday life. Because pelvic health isn't just about exercises. It's about reconnecting with yourself, one breath, one choice, and one movement at a time. So let's get started. Last episode, we talked a lot about the traditional medical model, why we're told to do Kegels and squeezing, and why it doesn't really make sense to do that. And today I wanted to dive into the bigger picture, the bigger scenario for women experiencing pelvic organ prolapse, because it's not just about the actual prolapse and the symptoms which we went through already. It's so much more about the psychosocial, the emotional, the lifestyle impact that pelvic organ prolapse has. And I just think not enough people are actually talking about that reality, that the living with prolapse piece. And I think that some of the barriers that we have are down to the lifestyle and not knowing that this is part of that prolapse symptom. So anyway, that's what we're going to talk about today. And I wanted to start, as always, with a little Claire shares. And what I was thinking about this week is how important it really is for me to continually reflect on what's stopping women, what's holding you back as you're listening. What are the things that actually prevent you from going forwards with whole body pelvic health or any kind of pelvic health support, rehab, physio, whatever it might look like. But what are the things that kind of hold you back? And part of that comes down to what we're going to talk about today with the psychosocial, emotional, and lifestyle factors of prolapse. And for me, it's also the practicalities. You know, I started out with one-to-one clients. I was seeing lots of one-to-one clients, and I got to the point where I was burning out because I was squeezing people in left, right, and center. And so I thought, okay, I'm going to have to make this easier for people to access, to get the help that they need. So how can I do that? Because there was too many people and not enough of my time. And also one-on-one means that I'm helping less people over less time, over more time. I thought, well, what can we do? So I created a short course where women would come in person, and we'd go through what the whole body pelvic health method is, pick out the specific exercises that are pertinent to each individual woman, and Bob's your uncle, they'll go home and practice that. After that, I reflected and recognized with many of those women that they needed a lot more ongoing support. It wasn't enough just to have the exercises, they needed the ongoing support to keep motivated to keep going. And I'm quite a motivator. I realized, okay, well, that's a barrier, that they don't have ongoing support. Right, I'll create a membership online so that we can provide that ongoing support. Excellent. Created a membership, discovered that classes that are longer than half an hour are really hard to do. So, okay, we'll film and make everything a little bit shorter so it's more accessible. Brilliant. Not everybody knows about the membership. So what else can I do? Okay, I'm going to write a book, because then more people can get their hands on this information. It's inexpensive for someone to buy a book, so it makes it more accessible, makes it easier. Great, book's done. And really, this happened not that long ago. A friend of mine asked me a question about pelvic floor, and I knew immediately that she had not read the book. So I shared about this in one of the other episodes. Of course, I needed to then think, well, how do I solve that barrier? So I am literally always looking for how do we make it easier for women to access pelvic health, to be able to do it? So needless to say, I recorded the audiobook, and fingers crossed as you're listening to this, the audiobook will be available, Hope for Your Pelvic Floor, on Audible. And the goal with that is that many of you are like me. You're listening right now, which means that listening is an easier way about things, as it is for me too. I devour audiobooks. So anyway, that's the sort of latest step on my how do I keep making it easier and more accessible for women to get hold of this information and do this work. So there we go. That is what I have been thinking about this week. So into our main topic for today, we've talked about the traditional medical model. We've talked about why the traditional exercises don't support actually the rehabilitation of pelvic organ prolapse. The main thing I want to cover today is that really we're not taking into account with any of this the whole person. So I want to look, and this is how I teach my master teachers. So I have a mentorship of teachers who I work with all over the world. We've got teachers training in Japan. We've got master teachers now in New Zealand. Like we're everywhere. America, like we're everywhere. And this is the piece that I think no other teacher training really covers, is the psychosocial, emotional, and the lifestyle factors that impact or influence through pelvic organ prolapse. And so I want to share a few of the things. And the reason I want to share it today is because I want you to feel really understood, seen, heard, that you're not alone, that if I'm here sharing this with you, you know that other women are out there experiencing what you're experiencing. And a lot of these, as I was planning this episode, I recognize as experiences that I've had, not just the women that I've worked with, but when I think about the sort of psychological elements, I completely lost who I was. I lost my identity. And I see this time and time again with the women that I work with. The lack of sense of self, just not I always talk about not feeling womanly, that it made me feel less than. And that's a big part of what I see for many women, that loss of identity. And then the other thing, and I see this all the time, and when I have, like a couple of years ago, I had aggravated my symptoms doing something really ridiculous, and I got hypervigilant, really paranoid, and hyper vigilant. And this is one of the things that I see a lot. And often this comes when women will ask me, can I do this? Is it okay to do that? And they're so fearful that something's going to fall out or something's going to lead to worsening of their symptoms, that hypervigilance breeds such fear and anxiety about everything. And that's huge. As we're just trying to live our lives, but in the background, you've got that anxiety and fear overriding all the time. And that leads to another area that I see concerns a lot of women, is this kind of mistrust and shame. Like there's, I felt really betrayed, like I was outraged with my body, and then I was outraged with myself because I should have known better. So I felt so ashamed of this experience. And I cannot tell you the number of women that I've worked with prolapse who have said exactly the same thing, that they felt guilty, they felt like a failure, they were questioning what they did wrong. And this is because we are told that the one sort of exercise is the answer, and we do it, and then we feel like we've done it wrong or we've done something else wrong, that it's our fault somehow. And I promise you, you are not alone if that's how you're feeling. If you're feeling any or all of these things, this is not unusual, and it's also not true. I have women that'll say things to me like, well, I used to feel really fit and strong and confident in my body, and now I hesitate even to sneeze or cough or laugh without bracing and pulling everything in. And we need to learn other strategies so that we can start to edit that. We can edit that out. So that's just a few of the things that I want you to understand sort of psychologically that impacts. And then there's this social side. This is huge. One of the things is massive isolation. I'd never really heard the term prolapse in conversation with anybody before, and that's still not unusual. And I just felt massively isolated, that nobody else is going through the same thing. And then, of course, loads of people are, but because we're not talking about it, it just feels so isolating. And the isolation gets worse because what so often happens is we're choosing the social things that we do influenced by the pelvic organ prolapse filter. So we make our decisions through this filter of whether or not our prolapse will be okay at that salsa class, or okay going to a social event, standing at a concert, going on a charity hike, like whatever it is. But it isolates you because you're choosing to not to do things because of it. And then, of course, it's still, unfortunately, a bit of a taboo. We're still not talking openly about anything to do with down there, let alone prolapse, which just kind of escalates the kind of isolation and the taboo-ness of it, because we have this behind it. It's just got to be changed. We're the change. I'm the change. I talk about it all the time to anybody that'll listen, and even those that don't want, I'm here sharing because it's so important. It also affects our relationships, whether it's your personal relationships, so intimacy becomes very complex. There can be fear because there's a worry of pain or making it worse. Will your partner understand? But also your other relationships in the work, for example. Does it affect the type of work that you're able to do? I know a lady who, unfortunately, because of her prolapse and the pain that she was in, couldn't do the job that she had done for many years really well, just because of the position that she was in, the physical position that she was in the job. I know other clients who've had to give up standing-based jobs for the same reason. So it's not a one size fits all, but it was impacting their ability to work. I mean, this is huge, and we cannot underestimate the massive life-changing impacts on women with prolapse. Giving things up because of prolapse, which obviously leads to massive, massive emotional impacts. The feeling of grief and frustration, embarrassment. There's so much embarrassment around it. It goes back to this, what I was saying about being taboo. There's just a huge amount of, because we're not talking about it, and then it creates this embarrassment, and it just becomes a vicious cycle. There's nothing to be embarrassed about. We need to find those confidants, those people who we trust, that we can have those conversations with, like joining the Pelvic Health Cafe, where we're all in the same boat. Maybe it's not prolapse, maybe it's something else, but we're all talking, and that's the main thing. I remember, before I even had a diagnosis for the prolapse, but the feeling of real grief around letting go of the body that I once had, and this mixed feeling of sort of frustration that it wasn't going to be the body that it was, and grief that it wasn't serving me the way that I expected it to do. And these are such normal emotions and feelings to have. And the other emotional impact that I think is really important to name, because I see it a lot and it can be really intoxicating for people, is a feeling of resentment for the body that they're in, but also for the lack of support, for the health care that they believed in and really wanted. Unfortunately, things happen, mistakes happen, injuries happen, and there's a long-term impact on our bodies from that. There's also the resentment because, for a lot of us, we're in a system that's pretty broken, and it doesn't have the information that I'm sharing with you And that's where I think we can flip it a little bit and start taking the lead in our own health, in our own well-being, getting informed, getting the information like this that I'm sharing with you so that you know what's normal, what you can ask for, what you can expect from your pelvic floor, all of these things, so that you can be at the frontline leadership of your healthcare in those situations. And then the final thing really is those lifestyle impacts. This is huge, you know, absolutely massive. Like your daily routines become so dictated by the symptoms of your prolapse or the fear of your prolapse, restricting activities. I was talking to a client about this today that, you know, well, I speak for myself. I'm a woman of a certain age and I'm going through perimenopause. I'm reading all of the things about menopause. I'm studying everything I can. And everywhere you go and what you read, you know, we must work on our bone health and our muscles mass, and we must lift weight. But then couple that with pelvic organ prolapse, then we're really in a bit of a sticky wicket, because there is just not a lot of education out there for women on how to lift weight properly, full stop, let alone when you've also got an underlying condition of prolapse. So then you've got this inner dialogue of, well, I know I need to do these things, but I have to restrict that because of my prolapse. I can't run because of my prolapse. I can't pick up my grandchildren because I'm afraid of my prolapse, whatever it might be. So you end up restricting things that you know you should be doing or you want to be doing, but you feel you can't. And there is actually a lot of really strong physical activity you can do when you learn how, when we break down the breathing and how you can use your breathing to really help you. And then there's things that you probably are doing, but not necessarily noticing that you're doing. Like, I honestly have seen this more times than I can count, is women choosing their clothing, your fashion choices. I know it sounds mad, but I swear to you, I see this all the time because of the sensation in your pelvis. A lot of women are wearing looser, baggy fitting clothing, hiding themselves away, wearing pads, so then wanting to wear even looser clothing just in case somebody sees that you're wearing a pad. This is the reality that we're in. We are basing our fashion choices because of pelvic organ prolapse, because of something that if we had more information and more conversation about it, we could be doing something to help and then not needing to. It really, you know, this is why I'm here. I'm getting on my high horse again, but this is why I'm here and sharing this important information. One of the other lifestyle disruptions is sleep, like sleep, because it's uncomfortable. Maybe you're having to get up because you're needing to go for a wee in the night. You've got this weirder sensation or different sensation when you're lying down. These are things that disturb your sleep, and we need good sleep and good sleep hygiene, because it's when we're sleeping, just like babies, that we're restoring, renewing, rejuvenating. It's when our body's healing, and we need that to help the prolapse, so we get another piece of this kind of vicious cycle. And then, you know, it then leads into, you know, the other lifestyle factors in your home, that you might feel that you are losing independence because there's certain things around the home that you can't do. And you might be thinking, well, that only applies with older adults. Let me tell you now, it doesn't. This impacts young mums who can't do basic chores at home because of their prolapse symptoms. This is not just for older women, I promise you. So that loss of independence, which feeds into the beginning of this piece again, into the psychological element. It's huge. You end up planning your whole life around your pelvic floor, around your prolapse. And you know, it's no way to live. We can do something, I promise you. So that's the psychosocial, emotional, and lifestyle impacts. Some suggestions or some information for you to understand that you are not alone, that this is what's happening out there in the world. And it's also information, even if you have not got prolapse, so that you understand what other women are going through and can maybe lend a hand, support them, speak positively with those women. And what I want you to take away is just a few suggestions. You know, I like to give you something tangible, something practical to take away. And what I want you to take away today is just a few ideas from each of those little influences. So for the psychological element, I'd like you to work on some self-trust. So many times women will ask me, do you think I can do this? Is this okay? And usually they already know the answer. They're just looking for confirmation because they don't trust in themselves. So when you ask yourself, or if you ask someone else a question, or you have a question, ask it back to yourself and really trust that you know the answer. And then one of the biggies for me is reversing and adapting your language, reframing your language, or just framing your language to be more positive. You know, pelvic organ prolapse is not an organ falling out of you. It's an organ that's displaced that you can work on replacing. So changing the language, anytime the little voice, the little prolapse voice in your head or on your shoulder, I always gesture to my shoulder because that's where mine was, that's just being naggy and telling you what you can and can't do, you can actually reframe that naggy voice. And then the other thing that I think psychologically is just getting some information. So read what you can, read my blogs, listen to the podcast, download the Whole Body Pelvic Health app where there's lots of information on there. So feeling empowered by knowledge, really, rather than taking that on face value, what the NHS Squeezy app tells you, because remember what we said when we talked about the medical model, it's based on faulty research. So we need to go elsewhere to get our knowledge. And then socially, find a community, because you're not alone in whole body pelvic health. I mean, I'm everywhere. So go on Facebook and you'll find the Hope for Your Pelvic Floor Facebook group. You can join the Pelvic Health Cafe, or even just get a few trusted friends together and open up the conversation. Because if you think about it, 1 in 2 women have prolapse, which means that some of your friends have got to be experiencing this too. So just find out, just be brave and get into that conversation. And then emotionally, something that I'm a real advocate for, and I do this in the membership, is I invite people to journal anything and let it flow. And then start to journal the little wins that are happening, that the changes that are happening as your mindset shifts, and celebrate them in your journal. And then finally, it would be your lifestyle. So this is like super practical, straightforward things that are going to help not just your prolapse, but your life. Do what you can do and focus on that. So often we just see all the things we think we can't do, and we forget that over here, there's a ton of things we can do. Even if you think, well, I can swim. All right, do that. Go swimming. Even if it's okay, I can get Claire's YouTube channel and I can do a class a couple of times a week. Whatever it is, focus on and really pour your energy into what you can do. Then, of course, we mentioned sleep. So your sleep hygiene, get on top of it. I know everybody's always harping on about it everywhere you go, but that's because it's important. So no devices an hour before bed. Start doing some wind down, relaxation, calm music, low lights, relaxing candle scents, all of the things that are going to help you to get a good night's sleep. Hydration. I've nagged on about that plenty, so I'm not going to go any further on that, but do hydrate. I've said it before and I'll say it again. Everyone, prolapse or not, needs a squatty potty. So invest in a squatty potty and you will thank me. It makes the world of difference, especially if you've got rectocele or rectal prolapse. So those are my little takeaways and suggestions of how you can start to get on top of the psychosocial, emotional and lifestyle influences of your pelvic organ prolapse. So thank you so much as always for tuning in to Hope for Your Pelvic Floor. And if this episode resonated with you, please subscribe. This means the world, not just to me, but actually to getting other women this information. Leave a review, put the stars and some information and share it to everyone that you think might need it. It really helps more women find the support they deserve. And for deeper support with me, head to wholebodypelvichealth.com to explore the Whole Body Pelvic Health membership. And you can ask more from your pelvic floor, and I'll be here, your voice of hope, every step of the way. And I'll see you in our next episode. Bye for now.